Greetings, greetings, everyone. This is Payman, the host of the Leaders.That podcast. Today, I have another great guest, a guest that we have something in common. We're both part of this beautiful book that was launched last year with Mary Gooden, Revolutionary Leaders. And that is my new good friend, Daniela Hartmann from Germany. We connected about at the end of June with a beautiful conversation and just a little bit about her. As I said, she's based in Germany. She's been traveling around the world. She was based and lived in Nepal, India. She traveled. And something we have in common is that she was based in Malaysia for a while working as a translator. And right now I am based in Malaysia in beautiful Kuala Lumpur. And then she worked for the UN. And as a result of that, she was traveling around the world. She was based in Germany, of course, in New York, Geneva, Switzerland, Pretoria, South Africa. And God knows where, maybe probably some assignment in Mars, on Venus and Jupiter and Pleiades, whatever, but that's another story. And then what she's doing also, she something very interesting. She went to India to study Buddhism and worked there as a translator. So there's a lot we can cover. And what she's doing now, she's working to amplify her impact. She's working with people, helping people in leadership positions to help bring authenticity to the workforce, connecting first of all to themselves, then to their team, and showing up authentically to the world. So there's a lot we can do. And she also has another book of her own called The Grid. It's available on Amazon. Highly recommend it. So as always, my most trusted advisor, this little guy, that's my MTA, my most trusted advisor, is telling me that me and Daniela, we will be probably doing more than one conversation. So this is probably going to be part one because there's so much we can cover, and she has a wonderful story, and that's why she's here. So Daniela, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much, Payman. It's an honor to be here.
Pleasure's all mine. So first of all, tell us, how are you doing today?
Today I'm fine. We're recording this on 8/8. So it's always, I always love these double numbers. And it's the first day of sun in Munich, so it's great.
Wow. Beautiful. Anyways, all right. So for people who don't know you, sure, who's Daniela as a person, as a human being, as a woman? We're going to talk about your business, about your impact, all of that later. But first and foremost, who's Daniela as a person, as a human being, and as a woman?
I would say I'm just immensely curious. So I'm curious about the human experience. This is why I travel so much, and this is why I love working and living in international settings, because I believe that we have a common humanity, right? We have common needs. We all need a home, we all need food, we all need to have some sort of purpose in our lives. We all need some sort of attention, affection in our lives. But for everybody, it's a little different. Every single person, even if in a family and in a culture or in a country, it gets even to be more diverse. So I love deep diving and figuring that out and bringing people back to or finding commonalities with people and exploring differences through the commonalities. So that's what I love.
Well, you're in the right place, because in my podcast, as I said, what I love doing is I love to have a look under the hood, so to speak, to see what's in your heart, to get to have a heart-to-heart conversation, to get to know you as a person first and foremost. Because what is business? Business, at the end of the day, it's not a numbers game. Sure, numbers matter, but ultimately it's a relationship nurturing process. We do business with people we connect, relate, and trust and like. And so this is the focus of my podcast, to get to know the person I'm talking to first as a person, human being, before the businessman or the businesswoman. So are you ready to dive in?
Absolutely.
All right. So to start first, I'd like to ask you a series of rapid fire questions to further get to know you. First of all, tell us, what makes you happy as a person?
Connection, heartfelt, authentic, safe connection.
Beautiful. What makes you smile?
Actually, beauty and kindness. When I see acts of kindness, that really makes me smile.
Beautiful. Now let's take the happiness a couple of notches higher. What makes your heart sing? What sets your soul on fire?
Well, it is being in connection. Again, I think it all comes back to that. It's, first of all, really in connection with myself, that I understand, what do I need right now? Who am I right now? And really open up to myself, to give myself what I need. If it's just in the sense of food or, the right kind of clothing, and then being in alignment with others, being open towards where the other person is, and then magic happens when we're able to see each other as humans.
Absolutely. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, what makes you sad and angry?
What confuses me is really meanness and betrayal. I don't understand that properly, I think, even though I'm sure I did it myself. I'm not a saint, but when people have a front that they give and then they do something to really hurt you behind your back for me, no apparent reason. They must have one, but I just don't get it. And that's very confusing and very sad, because there's nothing to repair, nothing I can do.
I'm with you on that. Absolutely. Now, what scares you?
What scares me is ignorance. What scares me is if people are just completely stuck in their view and justify all sorts of means and have no openness towards another perspective.
Absolutely. What would you say is your number one personal superpower?
Curiosity.
Beautiful. What are your thoughts on the saying that says curiosity killed the cat? I couldn't help it. I had to ask that.
Well, I think there's a saying, no curiosity killed the cat, but let's say authenticity revives it.
I love that. I love your positivity. That's beautiful. Now, you like traveling, do you?
I love it.
Just a little bit, right?
Very much.
We can do an entire episode, and we may do that just on the travel. But now I'm going to take you down a different type of travel, down memory lane. Go back to when you're growing up as a little girl. When we're kids, people around us, parents, family, relatives, teachers, friends, neighbors, always ask us, so Daniela, what do you want to become when you grow up? What was your answer as a little girl to that question?
It's really embarrassing, but I wanted to be retired.
Already? Wow.
Because all the retired people, like my grandparents, they had all day off, they lived in this beautiful house with a great garden, and we could play all day, and my parents weren't that available. I mean, they were working people. And of course, I could feel that there was some stress and some tension associated with it. And I thought, why go through the whole work thing, if you could be retired? Of course, I didn't understand the whole sequence, that got you to be retired. But I have to admit that I actually live my life very much like that. That I really put the fun of what opens my heart first, and see how I can make money with it rather than the other way around.
Sure. I have to say that this is one of the most authentic answers I've heard over the past 3 years. And that shows that you were pretty smart, because you understood from the get-go, what is life about? It's about doing what you enjoy. That was good. Awesome. Now, growing up, what would you say was your relationship with school? Did you love school or did you hate school?
I knew it was necessary, and there was stuff that I loved about it, like learning certain new things. I didn't like everything, but certain things I liked. So I kind of enjoyed it. I could see that it brought me certain things that would be beneficial. But then, of course, there were certain things where it's like, I'll never use that. So I figured out how much I needed to do in order to pass my classes. And I just did exactly that.
What was your favorite subject in school?
What was my favorite subject in school? That's a good question. I never even thought about that. It was probably languages. Yeah.
What languages do you speak?
I speak French, English, German, and Tibetan, and a little bit of Nepali, but not much.
I speak French as my first language. I know 3 words of German. And what else? I speak a little bit of English too.
Yes.
Other than that, I don't speak any of the Tibetan, so that's wonderful. I mean,
no Malay? You're not speaking any Malay?
I will tell you a funny story. Only thing I know about Malay is La. So, I was in Malaysia between January to mid-April. Then I went back home in Canada, spent 2 months there. And I swear to you, when I was talking with friends, even without even realizing, I would say, oh, come on, let's do this la. Come on, let's finish this la. And people look at me, what are you talking about? What do you mean? It was just like, subconsciously, it was like a reflex. So that's the only word of Malay I know is la. So,
Yeah, my favorite one is Kenla.
Kerala, yes, yes.
Are you coming tonight? Kenla.
Uh-huh.
Are you coming? Are you not coming? Kenla.
Yeah. We're gonna talk about your experience in Malaysia a little bit later, but so you mentioned that languages were your favorite subject. What about your least favorite subject in school?
Math, I didn't get that.
Same here.
And like physics. Chemistry, I thought was fun because we put the laboratory on fire once, so that was great fun. But for that, you had these little Bunsen burner things.
You made an explosion.
Yes, we're good at that.
Good.
Yeah, and just hanging out with friends. I think what was the best thing about school was hanging out with friends.
Speaking of that, imagine that we were in the same class, grade 10, grade 11. What kind of girl were you? Were you like the shy one, the nerd one, the life of the party, the chatterbox, the athlete? What kind of girl were you back then?
I was the tomboy. I was horseback riding. I liked to be out. I liked to have really baggy clothes. I was not very interested about who was interested in me or in makeup or any of these things. That just seemed like a waste of time to, focus on some guy to like me or find any satisfaction in that. So horseback riding, being out in nature, running around with my dog, that's what I loved.
Were you the rebellious skateboard type of girl, or?
Yeah, and then weirdly enough, in 12th grade, I started modeling. So I did, I went modeling, but even still as a tomboy.
Beautiful. Were you popular with the boys in school?
Honestly, I don't know, because I didn't give them any attention.
Okay.
There were some attempts, let's put it that way.
Awesome. What was your very first job? And do you remember how much you get paid the first time you had the job?
Well, I had kids' jobs, of course, like washing the car and stuff like that. So that would be like 5 Deutschmark at that time for washing the car. But then real paid jobs, it was I was modeling right into school. And then I think, I went for about 1,500 D-Mark a day or something like that for a little while.
There's
not a lot of jobs. I just did it for a couple of years. But
does modeling pay well? Does modeling pay well? Or did that pay well for you back?
It paid okay. It paid my bills for traveling and, rent, but I didn't put the effort in, and I was not, I wasn't a supermodel. And there are many girls out there who want to try. So it was a great way of traveling and meeting different people. But it was just for a couple of years.
Did you ever thought of making a career out of it?
No.
It was just a hobby. Were you a teenager?
Just a hobby, spending time after school.
Awesome. Now, let's talk about your path. From the moment you left school to now, how would you describe it? Would you say it was pretty much straightforward, smooth sailing? Once you get into one lane, you were set for life? Or more was it like turns and twists, like a roller coaster?
Roller coaster, adventure.
Yeah, more fun that way, eh?
Yeah, more fun that way. I'm quite lucky that I have quite a lot of self-confidence. So not self-confidence, but confidence in the world. I just always have the feeling I'm going to be held, and that's especially from my brothers, who were always very, very supportive of whatever I did. So adventure.
That was my next question. You just answered in a way. How did you get this self-confidence in you? Was it because of family, your environment, or because of just your personality? Some people are more outgoing, more personal, kind of confident.
I think it's a mix. One mix was that we already moved and traveled a lot when I was a child. I lived in Paris as a kid, and then in Switzerland, and then in Düsseldorf in Germany, then in Munich. And wherever I went, it was difficult. As a child, it's very difficult if you don't speak the language and you're on Earth and it's new people and you don't fit in. It's quite painful at times.
Yeah.
but you always land on your feet. And I could see how adaptable I can be, and that the world for me is basically a supportive place if I'm open to it. So I think this is where it comes from. And I do believe in this common humanity, and that I can connect with almost anybody on a common theme and then explore differences. And the moment there's a commonality, there's a connection. And the moment there's connection, and authenticity of really, I come from my heart, it opens the heart of the other, and then there is some sort of safety. Then there's negotiation, then we can see what we can do for each other. So that gives me confidence that there's always somebody around me that could support me.
Beautiful. You mentioned confidence. Now let's talk about the other side of confidence. You know, there's a saying that says, change your story, change your life. And by story, I mean what we tell ourselves in our head. So when you, Daniela, at some of your darkest, lowest point in your life, how do you change the story internally to change your reality externally?
Well, these were moments when I got betrayed, when people would, whatever, spread rumors about me, or, just cut me off out of the blue and I didn't understand, or, I got cheated on, like it does happen to people. I think I changed it, by the way, to see, okay, where's my responsibility? If something happens, I was there too. And to really go inside, but with self-love, and see, what happened there, what warning signs didn't I see? But the other way was also to say, okay, everybody has their path, and I don't know what somebody else's path is. I don't know. I've been open. I try to have or keep the connection. I try to bring clarity, and I could say that confidently. And if other people don't want that, then they don't want that. They will have their reasons. Maybe we'll reconnect one day, maybe we won't. But I think it's really acknowledging other people's sovereignty also in their choices, no matter how hurtful they are.
Absolutely. You mentioned that you worked for the UN. How did you get into the UN?
Oh, that's, I'm also quite lucky. I was, first I worked as a journalist, and understanding that I needed to know more about politics. I studied politics, international relations. And then I thought, okay, why not the UN? And so I just researched on the UN webpage, because my major was sort of in sustainable development and international sustainable development. And I found somebody who had graduated from my university in Berlin, and I was thinking about doing a PhD. So she got me an internship position. So that was how I started. And then there is something within the German government. I'm not sure if they still have the program, but it's called Junior Professional Officer. So the German government pays for a couple of years. And I, after my internship in New York at UNDP, I just applied, got the result or the acceptance letter within 48 hours, and later found out that they had 15 places and 1,500 people had applied. So somehow my profile matched an opening that they had. And yeah, that's how I moved on then to Geneva, to UNAIDS.
What do you think was the factor that made them select you among all those other 1,500?
Because I was working on internet networking. That was in the year 1999 and 2000. So working on the internet, having all of these connections. I was working in New York on small island states and climate change. So our program connected these small island states. So I knew about, internet networking, all of these sort of things that not many people had gotten into at that stage.
What was your responsibility, your day-to-day work?
At UNAIDS then, or at UNDP?
At the UN, when you first started?
Well, at UNDP, it was the small island states, so building up that network.
Oh, okay.
So we had a techie who did that, and I did the content with my journalistic background.
Sure, okay.
And then at UNAIDS also, it was, what do you call it? it was also the communications officer. So I did that, bringing out information about HIV and AIDS and connecting the different teams that we had.
And then you stayed. So you started in New York as an intern, and then they sent you to Geneva.
Yes, exactly.
And then from
Geneva and then Pretoria. And there again, we had different parts. The UNAIDS is UNICEF, WHO, UNDP, all working on HIV and AIDS. And then it was connecting them, exchanging information. How do we use the internet? How do we use different platforms to do that? So I supported, especially in the content part.
What was your favorite location that they sent you to?
Oh God, every location is beautiful.
Sure.
New York, when you're 27, is great.
Magic. Yeah.
Geneva is a beautiful city, and I'm hoping to relocate there soon. South Africa just opened my heart because I got to see a completely new way of life. Yeah, every country I lived in had beautiful parts to it.
Let's say today, you imagine that you were still working for the UN and I tell you, Daniela, here's a map of the world. Choose one country. Where would you like to go to work?
Oh, I would have to think about that. To really work, I think I would like to go back to Africa. I'm not sure which country. Botswana. I think Botswana would be interesting. They have a very interesting government that is doing fantastic. I think there's a lot I could learn from the Botswanian government and the way they rule the country.
Sure. And then you said that you went to India to study Buddhism.
Exactly.
How did you get into that?
Well, the UN is a very complex place with a lot of different interests, countries, looking for their way. And there were just moments where I had to rethink what development politics are, what my place could be. And there were certain values of mine that I had to sort of think about, who tells who what to do, who has access to what medicine, all of these sort of things were a bit confusing to me. And so I thought, okay, what makes us tick is our mind, our consciousness, the way we perceive the world. So ideas like greed or, withholding resources or, trying to get more for us, which we're all guilty of as individuals, in families, workplaces. But I thought Buddhism, that I'd already started studying, would be a good way to understand my mind and to find back a way for me to embody the values that I want to embody.
Absolutely. And then you went to Malaysia as a translator. How did you get to Malaysia?
Well, I studied in a monastery for about 8.5 years in India. And there I met a teacher who still is from Nepal. And I traveled then with him to Nepal to set up his international organizations, his charities, and so on. And one of the places where he taught was Malaysia. So I traveled with him to Malaysia and his group and translated from Tibetan into English.
How long were you in Malaysia?
I think I was there maybe 3 or 4 times, always for a month or 2.
And each time in the same location or different places?
Oh, different places. Penang, Johor Bahru, Kuala Lumpur, different places. It's a beautiful country. Very interesting. Also politically very interesting.
Absolutely. What was the one thing that touched you the most about Malaysia?
The food. And we had more connection with the Chinese Malaysians just because of the Buddhist connection. But just the hospitality and the faith. Yeah.
And the friendliness of the
and
people.
Also how Malaysia lives, you have the Malay and the Chinese population, the way they live together. It's quite impressive, I believe.
And the Indians and the expats, everybody
Oh
living
yeah,
together,
of course.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I always keep on saying that Malaysia is an example for the world where everybody from all walks of life are living in peace and harmony.
They do.
They don't care what you are, as long as you respect the laws and the rules and you're polite and civilized, you'll have the best life.
Yep.
Beautiful. Now, tell us about your, so you also have wrote a book, your own book, the Grid, right? So tell us about your book.
Well, after these 20 years eventually of India and Nepal, I came back to Germany to take care of my parents in 21. And that was in the middle of the pandemic. And so many people, had to be at home, had to be in isolation, and were facing a new life. And even though they had smiled about my life path for the last 20 years, suddenly everybody started asking, how do I meditate? What's going on with my mind? Can you support us? And I was really honored to help and support some people with meditation, with insight, and with my life experience into reconnecting to themselves, to really find their authentic self after they've been, let's say, quote unquote, lost. I mean, they weren't completely lost, but you have work, you have family, there's so many outside factors telling you what you have to do and when you have to do it, that it was such an honor again to just support them on their way home. There's a quote by somebody called Ram Dass, and it's like, we're all just walking each other home. So I was starting to do that, bring them back to their inner truth, and then how to connect with their families in their workplace in an authentic way, so they could feel more relaxed again with less anxiety and fear, and then also stand up in the world for their company, for their values, for the product they were having, whatever it was. So I did that for quite a few friends, and then friends of friends. And eventually I thought, why not make that actually into a coaching business? So to have a Buddhist space, even though of course you don't need to be Buddhist, you don't need to have any background in that, and support. So I went into the different parts of Grid together with a mentor of mine, G for growth, R for responsibility, I for integrity, and D for diversity.
Well done.
So for example, when we look into growth and responsibility, I had this one friend and now client that I'm working with who always had problems in her practice. She's a doctor, and her assistants would show up or they would not show up. They would suddenly be sick for 3 days, and suddenly money was missing. And she's a very kind, very competent doctor. And we sat down and just talked about and said, listen, what is really happening? What is your belief system that allows that? For a long time, she didn't want to take any responsibility for it. She was like, oh, they are doing it. I'm like, they are, but it's because something in you is supporting this process. So we really went into her belief system of being nice, how confrontation actually triggered certain fears in her. And we went into her belief system, how she grew up, into taking responsibility for that, but also taking responsibility for her practice and her patients by being clearer in her boundaries. And then integrity, what are her values as a doctor? What does that need? And then the diversity, how do I work with these different people? What kind of relationship do I have with them? So I walk with my clients like that. It's a very tailored process to go through what is really at the core of them. How can they find their inner navigation system?
Beautiful. Who would you say is your ideal client avatar?
My ideal clients are really people who are leaders in their workplace, especially, and who see themselves as leaders in their lives, because they will have this trickle-down effect of authenticity. We need more authentic leaders in this world, who stand up for who they are and who can clearly communicate what they want. And the other thing is, all the people that I've met in leadership positions, do suffer from a certain degree of loneliness because nobody mirrors them. A certain degree of disconnect from who they started out to be and who they are now. Lack of or infringement on their integrity. So this is really what I want to work on, and often also confusion. They're not who they used to be, and many of them, or at least the ones that I work with, they want to come back to who they are, and then through that strengthen their team, strengthen the impact that they have in the world. Because these days, people are very smart and very intuitive. They are not going to let themselves be fooled anymore.
Sure. So who do you work with when you said leaders? Are you talking mostly about executives at multinationals? Are you working more with small and medium businesses or startups or mom and pops entrepreneurs?
It is, let's say, mediums to bigger size companies or corporations, international organizations. I'm starting to get into that. Back to the UN, back to intergovernmental organizations, nonprofit organizations. Yeah, on the CEO or the higher levels.
Beautiful. What would you say is your irresistible offer?
My irresistible offer is that I create a completely safe space to unpack what is inside, and then constructively and with me as a support, but really it's the person, the client, who needs to take that leadership role to define their lives and to tweak it and to play and to find some joy in that authenticity. So the irresistible offer is really to have a tailor-made program over 3 months, but that is a bit on the short side, rather 6 to 12 months to also embody. I mean, we can have stuff, we can learn stuff intellectually, and we're all very smart, but then it is contemplating, tweaking it to our needs, and then embodying it. And the embodying part, I find that's where the juice is.
Mm-hmm. Do you work with one-on-one or small classes or big classes, big groups?
One-on-one. At the moment, that is what I enjoy most, because that is the safest place. The moment it becomes a group, we can do overarching themes, and that's great fun and very enlightening at times, depending on, the synergy of the group. But one-on-ones, the moment people start trusting me, that's when it gets interesting.
Absolutely. It's all about trust. So do you have specific dates where you open for registration, or anyone at any time can sign up?
I take no more than 10 clients at one time, just because I really give my all, and I meditate beforehand a little bit, drop into myself. I don't like to come rush into the door, and have my last bite of lunch or something like that. And then, of course, afterwards, I write up the notes and, do some wrap up afterwards. So I always have 10 people. And the way to connect is just to book a free discovery call. It's on my website, thegrid.global, and just have a chat, just have a cup of coffee together.
Beautiful. How are you getting your clients?
Word of mouth is most of it.
That's the best. Yeah. And when you started, how are you getting your clients?
Well, it really started from friends. As I said, they were suddenly at home, and meditation sounded like a good thing to do, and contemplation, and they could see how I had changed over the years, how much more integrated, how much freer, how much more confident I had become. So they were like, "Hey, Daniela, how did you do it? Can you support me?" So they then talked to their friends, and they talked to their friends. Sure. Yeah, that's how it works.
Beautiful. Now share with us an example of the most transformational, remarkable transformation you've had with one of your clients so far.
Well, one was somebody who came from a social sector. And he was brought in as a CEO for a pretty big but social company. a religious social company. We have that in Germany, that the different churches also have companies where they have kindergartens, care centers, and all of that. So he became a CEO there. And he didn't have a lot of administrative training. He knew about it, but not a lot. And he came in, everything was great. And after a week, they told him that he had to fire 30 people. And he found out that his predecessors had been very negligent about financial things, that the problem was very, very clear for a long time before, and they basically waited for him to do the job. And that was very painful, very, very painful for him. He felt also left alone by the other people because it was very clear that it was a game. And so we sat down, and because he didn't know how to do it. So we went through the different steps. How important were these layoffs? What was he expecting as repercussions for the people? And we kind of went through and said it had to be done. There was no other way. Then we went through, did he really know what's going to happen to these people? Can he be sure that it's going to be negative? How can he show empathy, but also be clear and have a good cutoff? Not to drag the process on forever, or, keep calling people and having it as an endless story. So when we had all of that very clear, and we looked at his values and how did that reflect on his values, after we had done that, he went in. It went quite well, actually. He laid off the 30 people. And half a year later, I asked him to double check with the people. And everybody was doing great. They had taken their severance pay, they had started new businesses by themselves, some retired, some found a better job. So actually all his fears that he had and this personal guilt was completely unjustified.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, let's start wrapping things up, and to finish off, I'd like to ask you a series of rapid fire questions on advices. Ready?
Sure.
What would you say has been the best piece of advice you've received so far?
Be kind.
Love that. What has been the worst piece of advice you've received so far?
Oh, that's a tough one. But basically, don't trust yourself.
Oh, that's a good one.
Like you have to be slimmer, you have to be prettier. If a man is supposed to like you, you have to look like this. All of these pieces of advice that went against my intuition.
Sure, sure. Imagine that you were blessed with a time machine and you can go back in time and sit face to face with the 18-year-old Daniela. What's the number one piece of advice you would give to her, knowing all that you know now?
Do whatever you want to do.
I agree.
You got it.
Yes, 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 yes. Do you have your own podcast?
No.
What's the number one reason that you don't have your podcast yet?
It would be at the moment that it's not my medium.
Okay.
And the amount of work it would take at this stage for me to get in. And I'm traveling too much to be able to have a consistency. I'll consider it in a year or two. But at the moment, my grid work and this one-on-one, that's what really lights my fire right here, right now.
Okay. Imagine that you had a podcast today, and today you're interviewing the most special person in the world, and that is yourself. What's the first question that you want to ask yourself? Don't think too much. The first question that comes to your mind.
What lights your fire?
And your answer is?
Connection.
Love that. Love that.
Authentic connection.
Yeah. The last question I will ask you, and that's my favorite question to ask all my guests, and that is, what is the smallest thing? And by small, I don't mean something small. I mean the one thing that you've done in your life that has had the greatest, deepest, most profound, positive impact in both your business and your life. For example, for me, it's been starting my podcast. What about you, Daniela?
for me, it was really looking at the lessons wherever I was. Yeah, to have the honesty with myself and the courage to unpack the good, the bad, and the ugly.
What was, two questions, the most powerful lesson you learned and the most painful lesson you learned that was a beautiful blessing in disguise? First, with the most powerful.
The most powerful was whenever I stepped into my power and into my intuition, and I trusted myself first of all, the outcome was always good. Even if on the outside it looked like a relationship breaking apart or something like that, it always had the best outcome for me. And
The most painful?
The most painful, yeah, it was a betrayal by a lover of mine. But then he set me free to really go and enter the monastery and to study. Beautiful. And to be off man for quite a while.
All right. Now, if someone wants to connect with you, what's the best way to do so?
Through my website, thegrid.global.
Okay.
And my email is Daniela with one L. That's the difficult thing. It's the German writing or Italian writing at thegrid.global.
Beautiful. Listen, Daniela, absolute pleasure, honor talking to you. I love your story. I love your path. You know, there's so much we can talk to. I salute you. You truly do the heart. Keep shining your light. Keep blessing the world with your presence, your impact, with everything you do. Stay safe. Stay awesome. God bless you, my friend. Take care.
Same to you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.